Nicholas. Great coffee, period.
When you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity this afternoon at 2, right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. We're broadcasting live from Holt's Restaurant in Park Ridge, part of our AM 560 Signature Bank Business Tour this morning.
Yeah, we got quite the crowd here.
Yeah, it's been good to get out of the studio in Park Ridge. A lot of people, friends have stopped by, listeners. It's been fun. And we're pleased to be joined by a remarkable young woman now. Her name is Karen Gaffney. She's a swimmer. She's the 2018 Quincy Jones Exceptional Advocacy Award recipient. She is a woman with Down syndrome, the president of her own nonprofit organization dedicated to championing the journey to full inclusion in families, schools, the workplace, and the community for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And she's really done amazing things. A swimmer.
I can't even believe this.
She's a swimmer who is the first person with Down syndrome to complete a relay swim across the English Channel.
Wow.
It's like Jack LaLanne.
Yeah.
9-mile solo swim also she completed across the width of Lake Tahoe. An 8.5-mile swim across Lake Champlain. A 5-mile swim from Molokini to Wailea Beach in Maui, just to name a few. So she's more than just sort of your weekend warrior swimmer when it comes to long-distance swimming, something she's dedicated a good portion of her life to. Karen Gaffney, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
So let's just start with swimming. What drew you to swimming as a sport you wanted to pursue?
Well, swimming is all I've ever known. And I started swimming ever since I was 9 months old. My dad taught me how to swim.
So
My
you
dad
learned
taught
it?
me how to swim.
Yeah.
Wow. And then what motivated you to do a relay swim across the English Channel?
Well, swimming the English Channel was a dream of mine for many years. And I had read about it, and I talked about it. In a talk that I gave to the women's swim team at Santa Clara University. And two other swimmers at the club where I swim at the Math Club heard about that talk and suggested that we form a relay team from the Math Club to swim across the English Channel. And together we did that.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a great story. It's an incredible accomplishment. I wonder, Karen, what it is you want people to understand about people like yourself with Down syndrome or people with other disabilities. What perception about people with disabilities do you think most needs to be corrected?
Well, I think people need to understand that people with Down syndrome have a place in this world. Our lives are worth living, and we belong here. People living with Down syndrome are graduating from their high schools, going on to colleges, getting jobs, and starting their own businesses, and living full and productive lives, and contributing in their communities. And we are learning so much about Down syndrome now and how to improve our lives that we are making tremendous progress. And that's what I want people to understand about people like me.
What do you think about prenatal screenings and genetic counseling for Down syndrome, as has been used in countries like Iceland to encourage the abortion of babies who test positive for Down syndrome?
Well, I think that it is wrong to target Down syndrome. It is very, very wrong to encourage abortion. When people learn that their baby will be born with Down syndrome, they want to be able to look up and see what Down syndrome is really like today. They need to learn all about the families who are raising their children and teaching them to lead full and productive lives. And it is just wrong to wipe us out.
When you hear people in the public arena talk about people with disabilities in the context of the debate over abortion, and oftentimes people or babies who test positive for Down syndrome are described as undesirable, or that's an undesirable pregnancy. How does that make you feel?
I would say that sometimes people in the medical profession will say that Down syndrome is not compatible with life. I think we are what life is all about. When you consider how far we have come from life spent in institutions, and then think about how far we can go with all the medical research that's going on. It is just wrong to say that we don't belong in this world, and that we are not compatible with life, because we are compatible with life.
Now, on the one hand, people with Down syndrome have been portrayed very positively, I think, in pop culture. You know, I think of Chris Burke from Life Goes On and Paula Sage from Afterlife. But on the other hand, our culture seems to suggest that people with Down syndrome are problems to be managed rather than human beings with untold promises to fulfill. How do you make sense of that apparent contradiction?
Well, as I said before, I think people need to learn more about Down syndrome before they make judgments in our lives. Everyone has to deal with problems in their life, whether they have one work chromosome or not. I think there is a great deal of positive information about living with Down syndrome, and there are way more positive role models out there. Just look at the quarterly magazine that the Global Down Syndrome Foundation puts out, called Down Syndrome World. It is full of information and stories on people living with Down syndrome all over the world, just doing phenomenal things in their life. You can spend an hour on the internet and come up with more than 200 examples of full and active lives of people living with Down syndrome.
And you're one of those positive examples too, one of those positive role models. So, Karen, and through your foundation, describe some of the work that you do on a daily basis when you're not, swimming the English Channel.
Well, I sort of am giving talks nationwide about the importance of inclusion for people with Down syndrome, and I advocate on behalf of people with Down syndrome. I've talked everywhere, like out of the country, in Belize, Canada, Singapore, Malaysia, Trinidad and Tobago, England and Ireland, everywhere.
And when you do those talks and you meet people from around the world and they see you and they hear from you, do you think that changes people's minds and changes people's perceptions about people with disabilities?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And Karen, why do you think Global's research is so important for people with Down syndrome?
Well, I think that that they are very focused on ways to improve our lives and not prevent them in the first place.
So for people, that's okay. Thank you, Karen. For people who want to help you in the work that you do, or get involved in some way in advocating for people with disabilities, what do you think is the best, most effective use of their time or energy or resources?
Well, I think they should get to know someone with Down syndrome. If they're in school, to reach out and be a friend to someone with Down syndrome. If they're in a job, in a work setting, work with their employer, carve out a place at work for a young adult with Down syndrome. And find ways to include people with Down syndrome into your life. If you do that, others will follow. And more people will learn about what Down syndrome is really like today.
She is Karen Gaffney. She is the president of the Karen Gaffney Foundation. Again, it's a young woman who's accomplished an incredible amount in her life, and now she's an advocate to help other people with disabilities accomplish a lot in their lives, and also, importantly, the full integration of people with disabilities in our civic and in our civic life and our society. She's also the subject of a documentary I should mention. I mentioned she did a solo across Lake Tahoe. The documentary Crossing Tahoe, A Swimmer's Dream. And again, Karen Gaffney, also the recipient of the 2010 Quincy Jones Exceptional Advocacy Award. Karen Gaffney, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer